Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. At our symposium today, I'm Gregory Skinner. I'm super excited to be hosting a panel discussion with what I have to say is a bumper crop of panelists. Super insightful, incredibly expert at what they do, and happy to talk to you today about this idea of CV EVs being futurish. Now, what does that mean? It means that we're at this point, this inflection point in the marketplace where we're not quite there when it comes to infrastructure. We're not quite there when it comes to vehicles. We're not quite there when it comes to service, maintenance, telematics, all those things. We're at a transition point. What does this mean for the future? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So what I'm going to do is have each of our panelists tell you who they are really briefly, and then we're going to jump right into this. So let's start with Sara. And Sara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Gregory. I'm the Director of Program Management at Exos. Exos is a leading electric class 5 to 8 truck manufacturer and fleet services provider. I've been at Exos for almost 2 years, and some of my main roles and responsibilities are building from the ground up and continue to manage the Program Management Office, the PMO. I have an amazing team of 6 project and program managers that ensure that the Exos team executes according to the roadmap and milestones. We are working on different types of projects, including the vehicle platforms, charging solutions, new battery and system development, etc. And we are kind of handling the process throughout the from the conception to start of production and sustainment of the product. A little bit more about my background. I am a native from Barcelona. I've worked internationally across 5 continents, within the automotive and energy industries prior to joining Exos. I have a master's degree in management engineering and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And some maybe other interesting project that I worked at a few years ago was $27 million program that at that time was the largest integrated charging infrastructure project for a single commercial fleet in the United States. Yeah, I think that's it.
Which is awesome. Thank you, Sara. I know everybody's captivated by your accent, so that's great, because then you get to, on top of that, layer your expertise. So it's a win-win for you. The rest of us are so envious. We're all jelly over here, but thank you.
Really? That's something that I dislike a lot. So thanks. That makes me feel better.
All right, Gary, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Gregory. Hi, everyone. Gary Schmidt. I'm the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Motiv Power Systems. Motiv Power Systems is a medium-duty EV company. We do class 4 through 6, typically in the passenger or shuttle configurations, work bodies, step vans, and packages and good movers. We really focus in early on ensuring that our customers, when they do get our vehicles, that we take the time to analyze routes, payloads, configurations, and really get them 2 to 5 vehicles to start off so that they understand what kind of impact the electric vehicle is gonna have, demonstrate how we can put them into the fleet and we can seamlessly integrate them into their workflow. And then our biggest job is driving miles on those vehicles. If those vehicles aren't driving miles, they're not making money. If they're not making money, we get pushed back on our EV initiatives with them. So we spend a lot of time consulting. We spend a lot of time talking about infrastructure. Quite honestly, selling the vehicles is the easiest part of this equation. It's making sure that our customers are prepared, that we work side by side with them, and that we understand at the end of the day that what that person holding the steering wheel, what their concerns are with our platforms, and we constantly improve those so that when we do start to do large scale deployments like we are today, we've proven and that we've got a plan, and that the folks that are leading those infrastructure and electrification initiatives have a plan and they've demonstrated it, and that we can now start to evolve and get a larger part of their market share.
Right. So Gary, very much a true partnership, not just handing over vehicles, not just handing over data. It's working hand in hand with
we've found if we do that, there's 100% chance of failure.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Todd, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Gregory. It's great to be here today. I'm Todd Mouw, EVP of Sales, Marketing, and Customer Success at Roush Cleantech. I've been with the bigger Roush for 15 years, and let me start there. So I think we've got a unique perspective at Roush on this changing landscape in transportation. We've got almost 50 years in history of helping OEM partners and customers kind of make that transition to something cleaner. So over our history, it's battery electric, it's hydrogen fuel cell, it's propane, it's dimethyl ether, you name it. We've been involved in helping OEMs and other partners try to transition to something cleaner. We here at Roush Cleantech over the last 15 years have harnessed that product development capability and helped deploy with fleets across North America. So we've got 3,000 customers across all 50 states and all of Canada, 40,000 units running with 2 billion miles accumulated. So it's interesting. Our perspective is kind of what's in its infancy and what's ready for prime time, and look forward to sharing more of that with the crowd today.
Right, really, really great stuff. So, Todd, I don't mean to preempt our conversation that's coming, but it sounds like the customers that you have are already in a mindset of adoption and, thinking into the future. It's not because there's so many users out there who this is new for them, but it sounds like your customer base is very much already there.
Yeah, I think it's clear. I mean, I think the rest of the panelists can agree that the diesel in class 4 through 7 is under fire and it's going to go away, right? So the fleets and the folks on the call here are helping guide those fleets to the right solutions, and it's not going to be one size fits all. So it's going to be a fun journey here the next 10 or 15 years for sure.
Are you saying that we'll all have to work another 10 to 15 years, or?
Well, I'm hoping not to, but I suspect I will be here. I've got to pay it for a kid getting through college, so
okay.
I think I'm in it for the long run.
Yeah, your ball and chain is there. I get it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd. Omar, last but not least, of course.
Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of this panel, and thank you to my partners that are on here. Thank you, Gary. I'm thrilled to be part of this today. So I'm coming to you from Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, which is where I live with my family. I bring I think my first NTEA show was 1996. So I've been in the truck and truck equipment space for a long, long time. I've been in the EV space for about 4 years, and I'm currently with Cenntro Automotive. We have 6 different assembly plants around the world. We have 12 EV centers that provide sales, parts, service, training, ride and drives, which are critical, I think, to the success of this transitioning market away from ICE to electric vehicles. We have newest facility in Jacksonville, Florida, right off I-95 at the Lane Business District. We just signed up our new building out in Ontario, California. Just returned from there after the ACT show this week. And we are a very sustainable electric OEM company. A lot like Gary, we are very hands-on. We tell people we don't want to bug you after the sale, but you're going to be partnered with us for life with that vehicle. We want to know all the data, where they're trending, how they're operating. So we're a very hands-on company. We're very, very customer-centric, very focused on the customers and their needs and wants and desires. And class 1 through 8 is what we produce and what we will be ultimately bringing here to the United States. We don't have all those right now. We do have the class 3 van and a cab chassis and a class 4. And pretty much wraps it up for me, and I'm delighted to be here.
Right on. So a new facility in Ontario means you guys are in it for the long haul. No pun intended.
We are in it for the long haul. Yeah, we've just returned from there. We have all of our assembly equipment being moved in as we speak right now, all of the dynos, all the lifts, all the toolboxes, hiring, staffing, and then the front portion of that has offices in it, and we'll operate an EV center out of that office, and I'll be back and forth, and it's going to be fun.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, well, let's get started. Let me just sort of lay a foundation for everybody who's watching about, a little bit of an overview of what it is that we're going to talk about today. Certainly there's been a shift, right? A major shift that's happening in this landscape. And I sort of alluded to it earlier, whether we're talking personnel, whether we're talking infrastructure, vehicles, even the underlying technologies, things are changing pretty rampantly. There's certainly been a focus on electric vehicles. We know that they're not the only solution, but they're one of the major ones. The key to having each of you here today is that there's stepping stones to getting to full deployment. There's stepping stones to this technology being entrenched, and each of you has something to offer. Each of you or each of your companies has one or more solutions that help us get there. So let me start by asking each of you just to tell us a little bit about one or maybe a few of those major solutions that underpin how you're going to help transition the market from where we are today, which is predominantly diesel and fossil fuels, into a very enlightened future. Sara, do you want to start, and then we'll just have everybody else chime in?
Sure. Yes, we are operating 4 divisions right now to support last and regional mile fleets. First of all, we have our set of vehicles, especially Class 5, 6 step van that has been in operation for the last 5 years. With nationwide fleets, we have those in different range options between 100 and 200 miles. And last year during ACT, we launched our Class 6, 7 chassis cab and Class 8 tractor. Aside from vehicles, we have our Exos Energy Solutions, which we basically provide permanent and also mobile or temporary infrastructure solutions. In the mobile area, we have different DC fast chargers, as well as the Exos Hub that was actually launched right before ACT this year, which is our mobile charger solution that can charge up to 5 vehicles simultaneously at a 40 kilowatt rate each. We also have our Exosphere, which is the proprietary fleet management software that allows fleet owners and operators to assess and monitor real-time and health and performance of the fleets and chargers. And finally, the 4th division would be powered by Exos. This applies to our battery technology and electric drivetrain that we include and sell for smaller volume specialty vehicles. So those would be kind of like the 4 areas we are supporting and offering. And then maybe a little bit more, everything is designed and assembled in our North American facilities. Most of our customers have been using the same body suppliers for decades in terms of step van mostly. So we provide the chassis and then have the bodybuilders with the specs of each customer build those on top. I think that's kind of like a good summary of what we're doing right now.
So very comprehensive then. So I mean, regardless of my entry point, if I'm a customer, there's pretty much something that you have in your slate of offerings that can help solve my day-to-day needs.
Exactly, and we can offer them separately or as a turnkey solution. So can be the whole package of the vehicle, Exosphere, and energy service or energy solutions, or it can be only the vehicle or only the energy solution. It depends on what the customer needs.
Okay, got it. Let me throw it out to the rest of the group. Does someone else want to tell us a little bit about what you have in store?
Sure, I can go next. Mine's not going to be as eloquent as Sara's, because I look at it a little bit differently, being in this industry for a couple years now. It's more of hand-to-hand combat, quite honestly, or hand-to-hand collaboration, if you will. We have our second largest department in our organization is our support organization. And the design that we have is that when we deploy vehicles, we have people on site doing driver training, doing maintenance training, making sure that everything that vehicle needs to be up and running on a day-to-day basis, that we have folks out on site training them. If we've got a service event that's coming up and the vehicle's down, our service team has to have that vehicle back up and running within a 24-hour period, and hopefully the same day. And every time they're out there, they take the opportunity to work with the drivers, to train them, and to constantly nurture what they can do to make those vehicles better. And we use a lot of, creative thinking around that when we're on there. And so there is a lot of hesitation by drivers. It's a transformation. It's a change. And some of the techniques that we use when we're out there, it's, do you go to a go-kart track and ask the person running it for the slowest go-kart? Do you show up and say, I want the slowest go-kart for this race? And they're like kind of looking at you like, no. I'm like, well, why are you continuously picking the slowest one? By the way, let's put 6,000 pounds into that electric one and empty that ICE one. And we can do every measurement and performance metric and still beat that vehicle. Once you go through and you start to talk with them about it, start to nurture them, and they know that you're going to be there to support them, the way that they embrace it is really great. And you do see that transformation, but without that hand-to-hand and that personal interaction, we find that the journeys do take a lot longer. We do find that the vehicles are sitting. So we need to get people on site. We need to figure out why they're not driving, and we need to coach them through any of those obstacles. And the only way that we found that you can do that is one-on-one. So honestly, that's what we do. And that's why our support organization is so big. If those vehicles aren't driving miles, they're not making money. If they're not making money, they're not going to order any more vehicles for us. So our number one metric that we have in this organization is those vehicles need to be driving every day. And if they're not driving, someone's on the phone asking them, why are they not driving that vehicle? And what can we do to make sure that we're getting that vehicle en route the next day? So I wish, it's a new technology. It's fun. There's all kinds of advancements in it, but the way that we're out deploying it is more old fashioned. And we found that we just can't cut corners.
So Gary, do you feel like is the challenge that the way that we're sort of introducing these vehicles into the market is just so new and so different that people don't embrace that? Or is the challenge that they're just so comfortable with the vehicles that they currently have that there's, if it's not broke, then they don't want to fix it, if there's no reason to change, so now you're actually trying to convince them?
I think it's a little bit of everything, but I think the number one aspect of it is that they had an electric vehicle earlier. They had issues with it. It was getting towed back. It wasn't getting serviced or getting put back into service. So I think it's just a combination of all those things. And by the way, a lot of the drivers have never experienced it firsthand, but they're buddied. And they all talk. They might not be in the same depot in the same state, but they all pick up the phone and they all talk. And when one vehicle that's electric goes down, all of a sudden the spotlight comes down and they're all like that.
So it's a couple of things. And so there's a bit of a sour taste in their mouth, and then that sort of negativity sort of permeates throughout the market, because it's almost like they're looking for something bad to happen in it. And when it happens, then everybody knows.
That's correct. Or they heard in the news that there was a thermal event. And so all electric vehicles are receptive to thermal events. It's just compounded because it is such a hot topic. It is such a hot commodity. Lots of folks are resistant to change. People feel like they're being forced and they don't see the benefits. So when you take the time and you really break it down for them, and you listen to their needs and you address them, and you talk about how we've overcome that through electrification, it's hard, but it works.
Okay, got it. Omar or Todd?
Yeah, so a couple different areas. We focus very closely with the distributor partners in every major city that have their dealer's license, and they have that intimate trust and relationship that they've had. Like Sara mentioned, they get bodies from all kinds of different manufacturers, but ultimately they are the upfitters and the final stage certifier that put the bodies on. So that's a portion of our model outside of going direct with fleets, but we focus on the sustainability plan. And so we meet all kinds of people, where they're really excited about electric vehicles, but when you start asking open-ended questions and probing questions about their sustainability plan, share with us why you're wanting to have a transition away from diesel and gas. Is it because you're wanting to keep up with technology? Is it because you really truly love no noise, no sound, no emissions? It's all 0, 0, 0. Or are you looking for an ROI? So once we dive into that sustainability process, if they have a plan, that gives you a whole lot of information that they've already met. It's an initiative in their company. It's definitely a focused force. And then we help them, if they don't have that, we help them write a sustainability plan and a transition plan. The second part of that is the focus on the ROI, because at the end of the day, When you add up the fuel that they're spending over their 6 or 8 or 10 years that they're keeping their vehicles, when you add all those oil changes, when you add all of the emissions and the DEF issues, an emission issue can be $28,000 just one stop. So there's, we see receipts from all over the country, from California to here on the East Coast, that are just unbelievable, vicious cycle of they're buying a vehicle, they're spending 70, 80,000 for a Ford 550 diesel or an Isuzu or another brand, a Ram, and then they're running those for 6 or 7 years, and then they're selling them with a 10% residual after hundreds, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time you put the fuel, all of the maintenance and everything that goes into that. So we have a very elaborate ROI model that we sit down with our prospects and we walk them through and show them the actual savings based on the numbers that they give us. What are you driving today? How much does that cost today? How much are you spending in your area per gallon on fuel? What are your maintenance receipts? And we go through every bit of that with them, and you build a very, very intimate relationship when you share that project together. So that's part of what we do. It's the major focus. And then ultimately, of course, the vehicle. We're very proud of our vehicle, so we train them on all of the feature-rich benefits, the technical aspects of our motors, our battery management system, the type of batteries we use, how it all works, and then dive in deep to how our products will fit into your business and help you be successful.
Omar, one of the things that pops up for me, as you're sort of relaying what your company does, when I hear this idea of sustainability plans and sort of shopping that or presenting that to a customer, and one of the hot terms that's out there right now is ESG, environmental, social governance. It seems to me that that's one of those things that's on the back burner, because so I'm in California, and every time we talk about these vehicles, all we hear is compliance, regulations, legislation. It's forcing me down this path. So help me rationalize why you present this idea of sustainability, because it seems like that's the opposite of why people are trending towards these vehicles, or it's way down the list of priorities.
Well, so I mean, the companies that have sustainability plans, and they've maybe had them for 2 years, they're very intense, and they're very focused on, say they have a fleet of 3,000 vehicles, they're very intent on transitioning, say 5% this year, 10% next year. And so helping them understand that transition away from the ICE vehicles into an electric vehicle and everything that goes, say, behind that meter. So all of the infrastructure that's needed. For example, we get so many people saying, okay, well, I guess I'll get one charger. Well, if you're going to get one vehicle, sure, but how many vehicles are in your sustainability plan to transition over the next 5 years, the next 10 years? And we can show you and work with the charging companies and the infrastructure folks that we work with of how you should consider that on the front end. It's going to save you a whole lot of money. If you're going to do 30 trucks, 100 trucks, 200 trucks, all of that needs to pretty much be known on the front end that you're going to do that. And that'll save you a ton of money on the infrastructure as you move.
So very much sort of big picture thinking, not this, bits and pieces, itsy bitsy stuff. It's like, no, you need to think more comprehensively and more holistically about your plan.
Yeah. You start building a house and the builders are there and they've got the second floor on and the bathroom's over here, and you say, oh, no, my wife really would like the bathroom over on that side of the house. Try that one.
Sounds like you've been through that.
Very expensive.
Todd, can you tell us a little bit about your slate of offerings?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's an interesting conversation. I mean, we kind of come at it from a different perspective. Obviously, at CleanTech, we're kind of known as the propane guys and gals right now. But as I mentioned, with Roush, we've got access to all the different solutions. And when we think it's the right time to commercialize, we will. I think it's a transparency that we all have to have in this industry with fleets about what the good and the bad are of every solution. I also think we talked about human nature, resistant to change. I think while I love EV and I think we've got a bright future here, I think it's being forced down everybody's throat, right? So I think that makes it even harder. And then unfortunately, we've got some very reputable companies here, but there are some that maybe aren't as reputable. And those fleets have a bad experience, and it makes it harder for us all to go back and then convince that fleet how to move from point A to point B. So We believe it's going to be a suite of all, right? I remember back to 2011, 2012, where everything was going to be natural gas, right? That was the be all end all. Then that kind of stopped, and now we're in this space where everything's going to be electrified. And again, I think that that's probably a mistake, because I don't think one, we can afford it, and I don't think that makes sense. Why not use all the different domestic energy solutions that we have? And that's kind of been the path we've chosen, right? Whether it's a bridge or a destination, we think propane, renewable propane, has a long runway to help us get to a more electrified future, whatever that penetration rate's going to be. I think the class of vehicles we're in today, it's the toughest job for guys like Omar, Gary, and Sara to do, right? I mean, you're talking about class 4 through 7 trucks, all these different upfits on them, range, payload requirements. So I think some simple solutions, if you will, and that's kind of what we preach, is that you can crawl, walk, run. Let's start with propane, renewable propane. Hey, at one point, we'll have a class 6, 7 electric truck. When we think it's right for you, we'll recommend that for you. Or if we think Exos' solution is better. So it's that consultative approach, being honest and transparent, that it's not going to happen overnight. We've got a long runway, but there are some things to help reduce cost and reduce your environmental footprint today, right? And so I think that's how our team approaches it, and it's great having the brand of Roush, because I think we've got that trust for being around for 47 years to deliver on that promise.
Yeah, you've said so many things there that we can unpack, or that we can address. Let me just throw out this idea. So all of you, in some way, shape, or form, have touched on the following: that there, people are not just simply not used to this. And Gary, you sort of like alluded to this idea that people are kind of almost looking for problems, and then when they find it, they tell everybody else. I also heard this idea of, hey, you know what? There's bad eggs, which basically says, in a market that's so nascent, we know there's going to be new people entering all the time, and they might not have the quality or the diligence to create a great product and put it out there. And guess what? It's kind of spoiling it for the rest of us. And then the third thing is this idea of, remember when natural gas and propane was the thing, and everybody sort of bought into that, and then all of a sudden it went sideways, and now everybody's going, here you guys are again telling us that these new things are the thing. Why would I believe you? So it seems to me that there's all of these things that sort of precede this notion of throwing this technology out there that are hurdles. So the question to the panel is, how do you cut through all of that? How do you cut through people looking for problems or not being willing to buy in because they were burned last time?
I guess let me start. I mean, I think Gary mentioned it early. I mean, I'm going to say the word infrastructure. People are going to think about charging and grid, and that's not what I'm talking about. I think it's all the different influences along that purchasing decision. I mean, you got to go check those boxes. And we've seen a lot of people not go spend time with technicians, not go spend time with drivers, not go spend time with first responders. Don't go spend time with the upfitters, right? With the dealers, and help them all understand how it's going to be a win-win for everybody. And I think ultimately that's where it's got to start. Because I think if ultimately the guy or gal that's signing the check and making the decision goes to all those different people, and everybody, 70% of them nod their head, we're never going to get 100%, but 70% nod their head, then I think they're going to be willing to go and be bought into that change that's coming at them. And I think that's why we've been successful. And I think the rest of the panelists have, because that's ultimately, hate to say hand-to-hand combat, but right now that's kind of what it has to be in order to push this thing forward.
Something else I want to add to that, and that was right on, Todd, is I mentioned the ride and drives, and I know Gary has talked about the intimacy with the customer too. We have demo trucks that are all over the country right now with those prospects that have raised their hand and said, hey, can you ship us one and come and train us on it and leave it with us for 2 or 3 weeks? Absolutely, 100%. So we have the mobile chargers that we send with those units. And I tell my team and others, you're not going to sell these behind your laptop. You're not going to sell these with an email or a piece of literature. And you have to get in your blue jeans and a company t-shirt, and you have to get behind that wheel with them and actually show them and train them. And the magic truly happens. I see the magic happens when they start that vehicle and they don't hear anything, they don't see anything, they don't smell anything, they don't feel anything, and a little green light comes on and says ready, and they put it in drive and they take off, and they feel that immediate torque, and they have fun with it. They're super fun to drive. So that's one of the point. And then the other thing, to back up to what Todd said earlier, was I believe I was just in this discussion at the ACT show. I think I got my first Nokia cell phone in like 1995 or 1996. And it was big and it was bulky and square and kind of curved towards your ear up here. And then we went to a flip phone and then we migrated to a BlackBerry. And now we have these fantastic devices here called an iPhone that I can't live without mine. I do everything in the world on it. So I think with the transition from ICE to electric vehicles, it's kind of going to follow these iPhones.
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going. I thought you were going to say you should give it a free Nokia phone with every vehicle sold. That would work.
Back them up in the technology a little bit.
Do you find? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
sorry.
Sarah.
I was going to say, I think to add on top of what Todd and Omar were talking about, I think that it's so important for us as OEMs to get customers involved as soon as possible in the process, because the product development in general is not something that we can do in a couple months, sometimes not even in a couple years. So that's why getting the customer involved and providing feedback from early stages is critical. So we work with customers daily so that our future product iterations are more and more tailored to their needs. So as they provide the feedback, we can add or change range or other features based on their new or future business operations, etc. So that's why it's so important to try to start jumping into it, even if it's like with a pilot or a demo, not wait for when everything is set up, and because that will take a few iterations and a few years.
Sure.
We hear that all the time, or I hear that all the time. I didn't even get to introduce myself. I probably should have. So, the work that I do is very much with customers. So very much with users, customers, to understand on the ground pain points, challenges that they face, and then it's working with OEs and suppliers and vendors to help them see that marketplace and say, okay, when we provide an offering to them, these are their real needs. Now, one of the things that's always almost amusing, and you've all sort of talked about it, is this idea of piloting things. So you'll get a fleet of hundreds, if not maybe thousands of vehicles, and they'll say, we want to do this, we'll take one. And one out of 1,000, it's so minuscule. How could that possibly have an impact? But it sounds to me like you're saying, hey, you kind of got to start somewhere. And then once you get in that door and you can start to relate to the customer, then it makes a difference. Do you agree with that? Or is there a better way to do it?
I do kind of agree with it. Here's the things that we've seen in the marketplace is if you don't have a consultative, very hands-on approach to it, the failure rates are super high. If you don't focus on the person holding the steering wheel as being your number one objective, if you get that person holding the steering wheel to buy in to your platform or to electrification, selling it up top, super easy. If I can get that person to say, I want a Motiv vehicle every time I show up, or an Exos or any of the other vehicles, we've won because we've now proven. And for us, we love the ESG side of it. We love, running our vehicles on sunshine, all that great stuff. But here's the truth, everyone. If I can't prove economically that these vehicles are better, I don't get to celebrate any of those things. So that's why it's so imperative that for all of us on this panel, that our first deployments are successful. Because here's a dirty little secret. None of us on here can produce enough vehicles to satisfy the market. All of us, guess what? We're going to come up short. We probably are about 10% of the total market right now. So I don't want any of you to fail. I don't want anyone to go out of business. What I really want is for everyone to go out and to be a good steward of our industry and make sure that we're setting low expectations and exceeding them. If they need 6,000 pounds in the back of it, we're not driving 200 miles in most configurations. We just launched it, but it's not in production yet. Some of the other folks on here are also launching similar platforms where they're going to be getting into that miles with the payload that we need. We're not quite there yet, but guess what? There's routes that will go under 100 miles, and we can load it up with 6,000 pounds or whatever it is, and we're going to meet or exceed those applications. So the homework early on and making sure that you're picking the right routes, making sure that you're picking the right drivers, making sure that you're picking the right depots, and we make sure that that's a success for all of us, will then lead into all of us getting our unfair share of the market. And that's the hardest part that we're in right now. And unfortunately, there's no easy way for us to get out of it. And when we use partners and other things, the partners are always driven by unit economics, and we're not at unit economics yet in the EV space. We're in the validation process. So that driver for us is the number one thing. And that's why we're on our 6th generation, because every one of those generations have production miles on them, have driver feedback, and we need to continue to iterate those until we right fit the market. And even then, we're probably only going to be able to address maybe 90%. At this juncture, I don't see us addressing 100% quite yet.
Right. So it's interesting because, what you're talking about is fundamentally that there's from the supply side is certainly this idea of customer support, but internally we're also talking about each of you managing your customers, like managing your clients, because you have to rein in their expectations to get them to feel like they've reached points of success and satisfied their needs.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, and you just sort of touched on this, third-party vendors. Omar, you had talked about dealers. We know that the guys, and I say guys, I mean guys, gals, the people out there selling are oftentimes sort of key points of contact. So they'll get introduced to a product because they're bringing in another vehicle and they go, hey, can you tell me a little bit about, what's coming down or things that I've seen on the road or heard about. And then your dealer is responsible for doing that selling. Like your dealer is responsible for doing that educating. How is it that you're going about, tell me how it is that you're going about making sure that people outside of, top levels of enterprise are doing the right things and helping satisfy that educational need?
It's a good one. I mean, I know on our side at Roush, I mean, it's almost a train the trainer thing, right? Where, you take a dealer partner with you to the customer, go through all the thumbs up, thumbs down, all the objections that customer may have in making the transition to whatever the technology might be. And it's interesting. You can do a PowerPoint for them, but I find doing it with the customer and they can watch and listen and see how you adapt to that discussion and help that customer in the journey. It's amazing how quickly your sales force expands and can carry a similar message to more customers. And right, I think Gary, you said, I mean, we need more people out there that have the right information or telling the right story, setting the right expectations. So it's incumbent upon the OEMs like us to make sure that those dealer partners have those tools. And it's not only on the sales side, it's also on the service side. What tools are going to be needed to service those vehicles? On the driver's side, what tools are available? So I think bringing those dealers back to home base, show them how many service parts you have, show them all the curriculum, all the things that are developed to support them, because ultimately they're putting their reputation on the line by sometimes walking into a fleet relationship they have. So, I mean, we talked about the infrastructure making drivers comfortable. You got to make those dealer partners happy too, so that they're willing to walk into those deals going forward. So,
Todd, do you find that they're enthusiastic, like when it comes to, to on the ground people? Are they as reticent and hesitant to embrace this new stuff as the end user, or are they at the other end of the scale and sort of clamoring for new and different things?
It's not be all end all for all the sales folks and the dealers are out there, but ultimately a good salesperson, if I can give you a tool to go call a customer and strike up a conversation or have another meeting, that's what a good salesperson wants, right? So I think the recognition that this sea change is coming at us, it's not a if, it's a when and how fast, right? So I think most good business development people give them another arrow in their quiver to want to call one of their fleet customers to buy their product. I think there's a lot more willingness to that, to listen and want to be a part of that solution than just saying, hey, I'm not interested, go chase the customer yourself. That's our experience anyway.
Okay.
I've seen it fork. And so you're both right. I personally have not had any success with a partner or a dealer with a Fortune, let's just say 500 organization. Those that have thousands of vehicles in their fleets, are requiring a lot more of a complicated sale. And I know I envision it, I typically explain it more as an enterprise software sale. You need to understand what the systems they use. You need to understand what their workflow is. You need to understand what telematics they use. You need to understand what information needs to get served to each department, what kind of goods they're delivering, what are they doing when they deliver their goods, how does all that information flow together and make it seamless and easy and don't disrupt the workflow because they already have that today with their ICE vehicles. The large customers require us to have a highly consultative sale. The dealerships, may have been able to do that in the past because that path had already been exercised for decades. And they've been spoon-fed telematics and other ERP systems that they've put in, that they've bolted up. Those things are well established. Now, introducing a new vehicle into those has been a little bit more complicated. So dealerships have not, in the 2 years that I've been in it, have not been able to overcome the complications with the electric vehicle itself, all those disparate systems, and how we talk and seamlessly weave those into one narrative. Haven't been able to do that. Now, the onesie, twosie type of deals, where they're just starting off with one, less than 5 is always our measurement. If it's less than 5 units, and you don't have line of sight of at least a unit of 100 or more, those are for our partners, and those are great for those. For larger strategic deals, we have a direct account team that nurtures them, does special configurations and software packages for each one of those vehicles that's specific to their business and business needs, as well as carrying the data flow so that when those vehicles work, it's just dropping in all the information, all those systems are working. So it's a very complicated sale to get it going up front, then putting in chargers, having them be smart. How do we use that data? I haven't found a partner that's been able to have that full resolution conversation with them. They want to pick up bits and pieces. They want to look at lists. Yep, I have 5 of those here. I'll sell them to you. That I don't find that situation. So when we're out in the market and we're working with partners, that's pretty much how we delineate the journey of the deal. If it's not over 100 vehicles, if they're not going to reorder, those are perfect for our partners. If it's not, those are more complex sale. We have an enterprise sales team that then handles those deals.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great point, because at the enterprise level, it is far more complex. And you're speaking to people who have a far more strategic vision of the pathway that they want their companies to go down. All of that said, we know that with the regs and legislation, eventually this is going to have to trickle down to small fleets.
Yep.
But we know that when it comes to dealers, whether it be car dealers or anybody else, when it comes down to an individual dealer level, a lot of times all that stuff unravels and sales get kind of flaky and things happen that shouldn't happen. So the question is, again, for each of you, do you feel like we're on this trajectory that's going to just mimic what we currently do? Because now is the opportunity for us to change the entire business model, the entire way that we think about deploying and placing these vehicles. So what are we going to do? What's going to happen?
And easy. And so, as Gary mentioned, I call the distributor partners that I deal with across the country, because I've sold them from 6 other different companies over 35 years. So I have explicit trust with them. We have business acumen together that we share, but I call those folks my safe zone. And the reason I do that is because of what I mentioned earlier. They already have the trusting relationship. I may know their end users as well, throughout some names: Enterprise Fleet, Enterprise Corporate, Home Depot, ADT. And so when those, we call an ideal customer profile, or ICP, as somebody that, as I mentioned earlier, they have that sustainability plan. But I'll tell you right now, all I want is 5 units here, 10 units over here, 5 units over there. 20 units right now is a big order. And I have one of those, but we're strategically going very, very slow and methodically, because we have to validate this technology and we have to help them. We've never done this before. And it's beautiful when you're in it together. And so I'll stop there.
By the way, I'm not implying that dealers are flaky. I just want to put that out there. But
Sure, sure.
you
I
know,
agree.
but okay. Yeah, you know, it's just, we talk to a lot. I talk to a lot of people, and they can have a bad dealer interaction, and it just takes one, right? One bad dealer interaction, and then they don't want to deal with that brand ever again. So the question is, how do we sort of mitigate that? Because now is an opportunity to change that way of thinking. All right, Sara, did you want to weigh in on this at all?
Yes, I was going to say that the additional complexity that's added here is that aside from having to, you know, or our responsibility or duty to inform and educate the dealer, we also need to kind of do a little bit more hand-holding and ensure that the end user is also educated. So it kind of like is double the work in this case. So that I think that ties in a little bit with what Gary was mentioning about the super high expectations about working with these dealers. So the service that we provide and the communication and the rhythms that we have with them are extremely important. Quick turnarounds, excellent service support and customer experience, being able to act very quickly and being able to tailor or have different options for different type of customers that they might have. So it just like adds quite a lot of complexity to the process. We do work with different distributors at Exos, and it's, as Gary was mentioning as well, we usually tend to have a separate team that handles those and separate accounts to manage larger orders because those require basically full attention and 100% focus. So, yeah.
Right. You know, one of the things that we had talked about in our virtual green room was this idea of noise. So certainly in this marketplace, there is a lot of noise. You know, if you get any sort of mainstream media information on what's going on in commercial vehicles, everybody has a point of view. Everybody has a different opinion. So when you look at it from a marketplace perspective, not only do they have to decide amongst everybody on this call saying, okay, who do we go with? Who's got a compelling offering for me? But they've got to navigate through all the nonsense and noise that's out there that say, do I even really want this? From your side, how do you go about sort of making sure that you stand out, like that you're the bright light and that someone attractive enough that someone comes to you and says, help me out?
I think that we need to be extremely focused on TCO, total cost of ownership. I think that has to make sense financially. If it doesn't, it's not going to work. So focusing on that, making sure that we provide the exact, well, the features that our customer needs, and we don't get, you know, all over the place, maybe trying to be very sexy or having a very sexy product, just trying to do or have a technology that's functional and reliable. I think that's very important, and focusing on what the customer needs to bring this TCO down and the initial capital investment that's required for getting into the EV industry, which is not only the vehicle, but also the charger and so on. So I think that's a big differentiator. I would say the other one that we've mentioned already would be being extremely customer centric and focusing a lot on having very good material to educate customers, like vehicle, any types of fleet management softwares that are available, different types of charging infrastructure, and trying to provide the solutions based on the customer needs and not only what you have in your portfolio. Because again, like I think that we are all in the industry, and even though we are working at different OEMs and different companies, I think that as Gary was mentioning, I don't think that we are fully competing with one another. The market is very big. There's space for all of us right now. And I think that just making sure that we and the customer has a great experience with the product is very important for them to continue engaging and getting on board. And finally, the last one I would say is having a proven product. I think that's extremely important, and Gary was referring to that as well. Having trucks on the road, having accumulated miles, having tested the different iterations and features, etc., it's extremely important to provide a little bit more confidence to customers that maybe are new in this industry, or maybe are, you know, old customers that have already owned EVs but that haven't had a good experience.
Is it ironic at all that, one of the pathways into these businesses is TCO, ROI, and yet, I hear Omar talking about, hey, but the one thing that really sells them or sets them off is they push the button, there's no noise, the little green light comes on. It's all these intangibles, all these intangible benefits that make any sort of electric vehicle or all powertrain vehicle so attractive. And yet we're going for numbers first and not all of these other sort of ancillary benefits that are just as important and sometimes even more important.
They are, but you got to have the numbers for it to scale, right? And I think is again, we've talked about it, having the drivers and technicians and first responders on board is important, but the people writing the checks, if the thing doesn't make sense and pencil financially, then what they're going to do is take some grant funding, apply for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and then go buy diesel again, right? So, which is what we don't want. I mean, ultimately, I think back to your last question, Greg, I don't know, there's no shortage of leads for any of us on this call. I mean, I think fleets are coming at us right and left. They're just trying to understand that noise, coming to reputable companies like ours that are on this panel, as well as the dealers that are on here saying, help me understand which is the right path. So I think it's being honest and transparent. That's where I go back. I'm working for Jack Roush. It's the first thing he said to me when I started here 15 years ago, is just be honest. Because you might not get the sale today, but you'll get the sale 5 years from now because you're honest with that customer. And whoever's involved in that process, whether it's a dealer, whether it's an upfitter, if you're honest about what you have and what the speed bumps are, then ultimately it's a marathon, not a sprint. We'll all get there together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we say the same thing, Todd. It's transparency. And a great example of that, being steadfast on TCO, because that's really what's going to validate this market for us. When you start to introduce what your kilowatt per hour pricing is, they're going into peak demand and they're using their level 3 charger and it's 3x when it's not on peak. Here's the transparency part. Guess what? It was probably more than diesel at that time, but we blend it. And so when you go in and you start looking and getting smart chargers, now you're bridging up your kilowatts from your charger to your vehicle, and now you're getting what the demand charges are, and you start to blend that, and now you're showing it on your dashboards. It's hard because then you have to explain around it, and that's why we have smart charging, because we don't want to charge during your peak demands. And here's some of the alternatives, and these are the things that we got to work through. So, and if you aren't transparent about it and you're not showing it all the time, then they feel like, oh, well, you're just omitting information because you want to sell things to us. And that is indeed not the case. It is this space is evolving so much. We're making mistakes here that are honest mistakes. We're correcting them. Then we're making another mistake and we're correcting them. We're getting all these learnings and we're continuing to build these products up and these offerings up. They change every week. And the technology changes every week. So keeping up with these things is really hard. And we have a hard time doing it, and we live and breathe it every day. Now think about our partners and think about the infrastructure and the people that need to be involved to constantly retrain and then have them be willing to be retrained on top of it. It's really complicated, but you have to be transparent. And if you're not transparent and you don't wear your heart on your shoulder in this industry, it's going to be super hard for you.
Yeah, Gary, I really do like what you said about, people forget that we're all as new at this as the end user, and we're all sort of going through this and navigating this landscape ourselves. So it is a pretty complex thing to mix all of that together and deliver a great product and have someone be satisfied, for sure. All right, well, I know we're getting close to time. So one of the things I did want to throw out there before we wrap up is this idea of the future. In my presentation yesterday, I talked about how there's so many people sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, I'm just going to wait to see how all this shakes out, not knowing that it's only accelerating. Like, it's not going to slow down anytime soon. It's going to be even faster than we ever imagined as the technologies continue to evolve. So let me throw this out to each of you. Where are we going to be? Like, what's your prediction, or where do you see us being in the next, just to keep it reasonable, let's say 3 years and then 5 years from now?
Like to predict the winning Powerball numbers, but I think we know with the new EP and CARB regulations around NOx, come 2027, class 4 through 7 diesel. I don't want to talk about Cummins, but there's a reason why they're diversifying their portfolio, right? I think diesel's in trouble there. So I think it's important not to wait, because even I think, as you mentioned, Gary, getting a fleet in and skinning up their knee a little bit, you're going to learn something from it. And if that's 1 or 2 vehicles, those lessons learned that you can then apply so that when this thing accelerates even faster, you can apply those lessons learned and be that much further ahead of your competition. So I would say don't wait, and it's going to be a combination of all the solutions out there today, including internal gasoline is going to be a big piece of it, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of solutions still in use in 2027, just not diesel.
Yeah, and I think that like waiting will only make that, other customers get into the product development process and get the products tailored to their needs. Customers, if you want to get, the perfect product in 5 years, let's say, if you get into it now and you start providing feedback, we are basing our products on the feedback that we get every day. So I think that getting as quick as possible on the EV wave or the commercial EV wave will help kind of like later on have a product that was designed for your feedback. So I think that's one of the things that I would say it's key, and I would encourage everyone to start thinking about. One more thing. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, one more thing. I think that in 5 years, or what I'm expecting is that we will have unblocked many of the current bottlenecks that we have with infrastructure. For example, right now, having chargers installed and having the charging infrastructure in place at the different dealers or depots or customer locations is a big bottleneck. We have very long lead times, but I know that there's a lot of effort being put into that as well. So I think that in the next couple of years, everything is going to just, keep accelerating exponentially as we solve these problems.
Right. Omar, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what we started earlier. The truth works every time. Just be real with the folks. We help write grants. We have an incentives and grants team, so we help educate them on the dollars available, potentially for the vehicles. So lots and lots of dialogue, lots of education, lots of tutorials, and being intimate with them to help them understand that. Todd mentioned earlier, I think it was Todd who said something about, we're forcing people, we're forcing this to do this. A lot of the dealers and distributor partners are being made by their state to install chargers. And so none of us like to be made to do anything. I don't like to be made to do anything. And most of the time won't when you try to force feed me. However, if you educate me and you help me understand this is a reasonable, makes great sense solution that's going to save money, it's going to do great things for the environment, it's going to do great things for the world also. And at the end of the day, it's a transition. Help me understand the benefits from that, how it's genuinely going to help me. I feel very successful that when you sit down with somebody and you show them that ROI or the TCO and the benefits and how long they're going to keep these vehicles versus all the headaches they've had with the other ones, the sooner we get into that with our prospects and customers, we have very positive outcomes, and it's a fantastic experience every single time that we go through that, and some are still very skeptical, but the ones who, again, are interested, and the ones who are interested and have sustainability plans, it gets a whole lot easier.
Right.
Yeah, we look at it similar to what Omar looks at it. We go out and, when they do give us a similar answer to that, what we look at is we do 2 to 5 vehicles. We sell the infrastructure that comes along with those, so it's turnkey. But we also take our incentive team and we overlay with all their depots where incentives are. And we do focus initially on infrastructure, because if we can get infrastructure in there and we can reduce that cost, what we're doing is giving that person or that depot manager a win. We're also giving them a blueprint on when they do have to go out and they start to increase the buy. This is what the journey is going to look like. And then we also show them a waterfall. If you're going to be compliant in these states, specifically California, this is your fleet size. This is what your buy plan needs to look like. So getting 2 to 5 in now is going to be instrumental, because starting next year, you're going to have to do at least 10%. A year after that, you're going to have to do more. So, showing them that waterfall, it's not to intimidate them, because when I look at it, I just get excited. But then I also think about, well, how's the market even going to satisfy that? Because, oh my gosh, the numbers are off the charts. So, when you show them that information, when you give them that waterfall and you really kind of just throw it in your face, okay, you got 1,000 vehicles in California. Well, this is what your buying schedule is going to look like. By the way, you're going to probably have to source from multiple OEMs to get to those numbers. What's your strategy on that? Oh, you haven't started yet? Well, so you're going to go in, and on average, our depots of over 30 or more vehicles are taking 18 months to get fully in market. So how are you going to now meet that when your larger depots are going to be 12 to 18 months behind just to get the infrastructure in?
Right. So it sounds like then our future is more hand-holding, more education, dipping your toe in the water, and then we'll see where we're at 3 years from now.
Honestly, the market just doesn't trust the technology yet. So we've got we've got to earn our right to get into those. And the only way that we can earn that is through demonstration.
Right. All right. On that note, we're going to wrap up. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you all for joining. It was a pleasure having each of you on this panel. I hope everybody listening enjoyed. And I encourage you all to stay on and watch the next presentations that are coming up. And if you need to reach out to any of us, then reach out to Work Truck and they'll put you in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Gregory.
Thanks, Gregory.